What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 17. Appreciate you all for listening, sincerely. If you're curious about the workout I'm doing in the video, I will put it in the description below, and you can try to get after that. It's a challenge for sure. The camera died and cut me off toward the end of the workout, but we almost finished on camera. It's basically 10 total rounds. You'll see. I'll put in the description. If you want to take my kettlebell course, if you want to train with me directly in the next 12 weeks, get in the best shape of your life, hit the link in bio, all that's there. Or not bio, sorry, in the description. I'll put my link tree, all of that's there. But today I wanted to talk about building muscle with kettlebells and just kettlebells only, and your body weight. But the only equipment you're using is kettlebells. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because I post about this a lot on TikTok and Instagram, and you guys can follow me on there too. It's all Trevor's Instinct across all platforms. And I get a lot of pushback and just people doubting me, like, no way he built that physique with kettlebells, like basically implying that I built my physique in the gym and now I'm like using the kettlebell as some sort of prop to attract and scam people. As that would be quite the elaborate plan, but I guess you can't really put anything past people nowadays after Liver King. So, and there's tons of these guys out there, but I want to just make it clear, and I want to talk about it because this misconceptions usually come from ignorance. So hopefully I'll educate you on this. Of course, there's a lot of people who obviously support, believe, all that type of stuff, but it's pervasive enough to argue that there is a pretty broad misconception out there that you can't build muscle with kettlebells. And I want to debunk that because I truly believe that kettlebells are the best way to kind of build a lean, athletic, fit, muscular, just shredded, healthy body, and not just for the physique, but your function improves as well. You get more athletic, you get more explosive, you get better endurance, better strength endurance, being able to use that strength for longer periods of time translates really well to grappling, fighting, any sport. Any sport where you're using your body, it's going to help you a lot more than I think traditional lifting. Now, traditional lifting is fine, but the argument that I really make is for people, most guys out there, I'll just speak to guys because I'm a guy. Most guys out there, what do they really want? A lot of guys will say, oh, I want to be big, I want to be jacked, but what guys really want is they want to be lean and shredded. They want to look like Tyler Durden from Fight Club or Bruce Lee or, somebody who looks good taking their shirt off whenever they want. And that's what girls want as well, by the way. Girls don't care how big you are. They mostly care how good you look and how, that's more of this sex appeal. I don't want to flag this or whatever on YouTube. Never know. YouTube takes everything down. But yeah, that's what I truthfully believe that's what most guys want. But they psych themselves out into thinking, no, I just want to get big. I can always cut. Because let's be honest, getting big is easy. Anybody can do that. Anybody can go to the gym, pump weights, take long breaks. You're not pushing yourself. You're not really challenging yourself aside from pushing heavy weights. Of course, that's challenging, but from a kind of fitness and cardiovascular standpoint, you're not pushing yourself at all. It's very easy and comfortable. And then on top of that, you just have to eat a lot. And most of the time, these guys don't really eat the right foods. They're eating whatever they want because they're bulking, bro. And then it starts this whole stupid cascade. Whatever, that's a whole other conversation. But traditional gym lifting will also more likely lead to injuries, especially for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And I just think, like, why would you go down that whole path of basically training like a bodybuilder if you don't want to look like a bodybuilder? You want to look like Brad Pitt or Bruce Lee. And yeah, people will argue and say, well, their workouts were in the gym, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But they didn't have to do it that way. My whole thing is chase the function and let the form follow. The form being how your body looks, not the actual form of you lifting weights. That's what people who kind of pursue traditional gym lifting do. They basically sacrifice the function for the form. They're kind of reverse engineering their body to look a certain way and to look like it can perform a certain way, but when it actually comes to performing, they can't. Something that taught me this was jiu-jitsu. The first thing you learn, kind of. When you grapple with these big muscular dudes who've been in the gym, at first you're a little intimidated. You're like, oh man, this guy's going to wipe the floor at me. But you grapple with enough of them and you realize, like, these guys can't last longer than 30 seconds. They have no endurance, no function, they can't move properly either. They might be strong, but they're only strong in certain kind of planes of motion. If you get on top of them, yeah, they might be able to momentarily bench press you off of them, but still, they just don't know how to move their body well. They're not quick. They're not agile. All of this stuff matters, and not just for jiu-jitsu, for any sport. And I believe that your ability to perform and be functional, have mobility, have strength, have endurance, all of this stuff is ultimately what being healthy is all about. You want to be healthy from the inside out and let your body be a reflection of that instead of reverse engineering it. So, I'll talk about 6 points. Point number one when it comes to building muscle with kettlebells is what I just alluded to, which is not sacrificing function for form. You see, when you use kettlebells, you're always enhancing your function. You're always including your core, your legs, your shoulders, kind of your full body. And especially when you use them the right way. A lot of people use kettlebells as just normal weights, and they, maybe just carry them or hold them and do squats. And there's nothing wrong with these things, but there's way more that you can do with the kettlebell, and it takes a lot of technique. You probably need a coach. You need to practice a lot, like a sport. You need to practice. So it doesn't come overnight. There is a learning curve, so I think that deters a lot of people. But when you start to learn how to do stuff like this, the snatches, swinging, snatching, high pulls, any ballistic type of movement, it's a total game changer that you can't really replicate with anything else. You can kind of do it with dumbbells, but it's nowhere near the same, nowhere near as effective and safe. So with the kettlebells, you're always chasing performance, chasing function, getting stronger, getting faster, completing certain tests in shorter amount of time and progressively overloading that way. And in this way, you're enhancing the way your body works, in terms of how it performs fitness-wise and more agile, all that type of stuff. And then the physique is a byproduct of that. You want your physique to be a byproduct, almost like you look at an old school farmer. You see this guy, he's shredded, he's got, big forearms, nice abs, everything like that. And you look at guys like that and you're like, man, how does he look like that? He doesn't work out or anything like that. His physique is just a byproduct of the function he performs all day. So in my opinion, kettlebells kind of, not even my opinion, it's true. Kettlebells will kind of give you that farmer's body. And obviously you're probably thinking like, I don't see a lot of jacked farmers, dude. It's just an analogy, but think more Greek statue. Like those guys, swinging iron around, carrying iron around for long periods of time, battling all that, whatever the fuck they were doing functional stuff, right? They weren't just going to the gym and lifting weights, and their body was a byproduct of that. They had a beautiful sculpted core, big legs, big arms, all that type of stuff, but that was a byproduct, right? So that's number one, is do not sacrifice function for the form or the looks of your body, which I think a lot of traditional weightlifting pretty much does. Can you structure a weightlifting workout so that it doesn't do that, and you do more circuit style training and things like that? Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's actually less safe in the long run because you're going to have to use heavier weights. With the kettlebells, you're always using relatively light weights compared to your body weight. But the way it's designed and the way that you use it is much more difficult than other kind of traditional weights. So it puts more of a strain on your core, on your legs, things like this. So it makes you stronger with kind of less weight. Somebody said that, I think it was his name, Pavel Tsatsouline is his name, and he's kind of like the father of the kettlebell movement from Russia. He kind of brought kettlebells from Russia over to the States, and I base a lot of what I do after him and after a couple of other guys, not even kettlebell guys, but other stuff I'll talk about. But I take a lot of inspiration from him. And he basically says, you can watch him on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's a really good podcast, and he talks about all of this. But in that podcast, there's a clip where he says, basically, he was training this guy who was trying to break the world record for deadlifting, squatting, and bench pressing. But his deadlift was stuck. It was at a plateau. It kept hurting his back, blah, blah, blah. So he came to Pavel. Pavel showed him some kettlebell stuff. Within, I think, 6 to 8 months, he added almost 50 or 60 pounds to his deadlift, something like that. And he was theorizing about it, and he basically said, like, the other guy's coach was theorizing that kettlebells really work the muscles without killing the muscles. So it allows you to kind of keep making more gains and progress without hindering yourself by needing more recovery, if that makes sense. That's number one. So number two is, how do we kind of like start to go about this? And the way I do it with my clients is we always start with one kettlebell, around 12 to 16 kilograms, judging how strong the person is. And let's just say we're starting with 16, 35 pounds. You'll master the basics. You'll master all the fundamental movements, the swing, the clean, the high pull, the snatch, the Turkish get up, the squat, press, thruster. Kind of just these basic movements, we master them, you know, do a lot of repetitions, and I structure the workouts in a certain way. So within about 4 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks, again, depending on the person, you should have almost everything under your belt skill-wise. Are there still going to be stuff to work on? Yeah, of course, but you want to master the basics and the fundamentals with the kettlebell because there's that learning curve. You can't just jump into pushing heavy weights and doing stuff like that. You will hurt yourself. There's a lot of technique involved. So you start, fairly light, you master the basics, and then what I start to incorporate as well is calisthenics, so body weight training. So the kettlebell really hits the legs, core, shoulders, and of course it hits your arms and grip and things like that, but it more so hits these bigger muscle groups, minus kind of your chest, minus your back. It still is hitting your back, don't get me wrong, but you're not necessarily getting the hypertrophic stimulus you would need in these muscle groups to really kind of grow, if that makes sense. So what I do is I supplement body weight training with the kettlebell training and usually pair them together in kind of like a circuit. And what this does is you're getting the stimulus from the weight resistance of the kettlebell, which is usually lacking in calisthenics. Because, guys can build amazing physiques with just body weight training, amazing, but they typically lack legs. And I think if you were to put them in a fight or on the mats in a jiu-jitsu mat or something like that, they would lack that kind of explosive capability and that explosive endurance that you need to really fight and grapple. So I think they have the physique, but they don't have that function per se. They have more function than traditional weightlifters, though, because they're obviously learning how to use their body in so many different ways. But when it comes to maybe pushing another weight or another person or things like that, I think they kind of lack that explosive strength and that explosive endurance, quite frankly. I used to do just just calisthenics for a little while, and I was grappling with a Russian dude, and he, after we were done grappling, I asked him, like, what do you do outside of this, man? You're like a chimpanzee. You're freaking strong as hell, corded steel for muscles, and you never get tired. And he just said, just kettlebells. So I think the body weight exercises are really important for starting to shape the physique and get that more hypertrophic stimulus where you want them, where you want it rather, which is more so in the back, the chest, the arms, because everything else is hit by the kettlebell. And when you pair these two things together, you can look this up, ask ChatGPT, research it on Google, whatever. But when you do kettlebell exercises, because they're resistance training and compound lifts and high intensity interval training, you're skyrocketing your testosterone and HGH. So you want to skyrocket those hormones as you do the calisthenics too, because then you're just maximizing your gains, as logic would tell you. So that's another thing. So the third thing we kind of move on to, so you've mastered the basics with a single kettlebell. You've started to incorporate body weight exercises in between sets and start to develop that chest, the back, the arms. Now you're ready to kind of level up into double kettlebells. So you take the kettlebell of the same weight and add it to the mix, and you start to do double kettlebell squats like you see me doing in this video, thrusters, swings, the same movements just with 2 kettlebells. And what this does is obviously doubles the resistance, doubles the challenge, and I think helps you grow a lot more. That's what I've seen. I've seen a lot more muscle development when you start to incorporate that second kettlebell, but you have to make sure you build the foundation with a single kettlebell. If you don't build that foundation, if you don't master the moves first, you're way more likely to hurt yourself. So the double kettlebells really add that fearsome stimulus that will really help you grow and basically boost everything else too, like your explosiveness, your explosive endurance again. But the single kettlebell, still acts as that way to kind of prolong certain sessions and get even more hypertrophy and things like that. So I've noticed that when you start to incorporate the double kettlebells, they do help you grow, and they also really help you burn more fat and up your performance. But do not neglect single kettlebell exercises also, because that can actually help you get more hypertrophy and still help to grow the muscles as well. And then, once you've done that, of course, we want to, so basically, guys, it's the same principles as like bodybuilding. Your resistance training, you're improving it over time, you're progressively overloading, skill-wise, and then adding the second kettlebell, doing more reps of push-ups and pull-ups, of course. That's another thing you want to keep scaling over time. But then you also want to scale the weight at a certain point. So how do you know when to do that? Well, I follow a couple of different tests that I give to my clients and myself, and we'll test these things every once in a while. And at a certain point, it's pretty frequent actually to because these tests are also a workout, of course. So passing these tests is not easy, and when you do pass, and you pass for a certain amount consecutively in a row, workout wise. So let's say you're doing the test on Monday, and you try it again on Wednesday, and you try it again on Saturday. You pass it all 3 times. It's time to move up in weight. Then what you're going to do is you're going to get one heavier kettlebell, about 5 to 10 pounds heavier. You'll kind of repeat that process of going through the motions that you went with that single kettlebell at the beginning, depending what program you're following. If you're following my program, link in the description, you'll know exactly what to do, or if you're working with me. If not, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot, trust me. You're going to have to figure out a lot on your own. But you'll basically kind of go through that process again, get comfortable, add that same kettlebell weight for your double kettlebells, and now here you are. You're in it. You've leveled up, and that's basically what you do for the rest of your life. You keep running those tests, keeping yourself in pinnacle condition, and then you get more and more used to these kettlebell weights. You build the muscle, you build the endurance, you build everything that you need to continue making gains in that sense. And then you repeat the process again with a slightly heavier kettlebell. Add another second kettlebell. And during this whole time, you're also scaling your push-ups and pull-ups. And what my recommendation is, what I've gotten to, because again, we're not trying to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. You just want to look good, have good muscle definition up in your upper body and your legs, and be lean, shredded. And so what I've gotten to is, I'm doing 300 push-ups on my push days, 100 pull-ups on my pull days, and I keep that stagnant. The only thing I scale is the kettlebell weights at this point, and the reps and the intensity of circuits. But with the body weight exercises, I like to keep them stagnant. And now I focus more on tempo, getting the perfect form, squeezing more at the top of the pull-ups, just little things like this. But there comes a point where you don't need to continue to add reps to the body weight movements, because the progressive overload will come from that resistance training stimulus. And when you're pairing these two things together, the more weight you're using, the harder it gets, the harder the push-ups or the pull-ups will also be, because you're just more fatigued, and then you have to adapt. You get to that point, and you progressively overload again. So I think, for the sake of efficiency and time, and also not injuring yourself and getting wear and tear injuries, 300 push-ups, 100 pull-ups is where you want to be, what you want to aim for. But it takes time to get there. It could take you a year. Do not rush any of this. And that's kind of my last point, is you want to scale over the long term. I look at this as a 5 to 10 year process. I'm not trying to blow my body up in months. It just doesn't work that way. And people who do that will injure themselves. They're not healthy. They're not eating correctly. All this stuff, bulking, cutting, it's not a healthy thing to do. You just want to steadily scale and progressively overload and challenge your fitness levels over time, and listen to your body. The more you expend energy, the hungrier you'll get, and you listen to that. And I've already talked about my diet and stuff like that, so I could talk about it again if you have questions. But that's how I live. So I'm not tracking everything meticulously. I'm just keeping my fitness level pinnacle all the time, and I have certain tests that I deploy, and I have to pass those tests consecutive amounts in a row, and then I'm ready to scale. And then I spend maybe 3 to 6 more months at that weight. I've been spending almost a year with the 24 kilos. And it's not like I don't use heavier kettlebells sometimes, but primarily my workouts will be with just those 24 kilos. So for somebody who's brand new to kettlebells, start at 16 kilo, master that, start to incorporate push-ups and pull-ups, get comfortable with those. Once you've got all that down pat, you feel like you're ready, add another kettlebell of the same weight to the mix, start doing double kettlebell workouts and single kettlebell workouts and body weight exercises, and then start to deploy these tests. Once you pass 3 to 4 consecutive times in a row, you want to make sure you're at that point and you can maintain that point. Then you scale the weight. Then you repeat that process maybe every 3 to 6 months, depending on your age, your everything else. Everyone's so different, so it depends on your age, your fitness level, how often you're doing these workouts, how committed you are. All this stuff really matters. So it is a science, though. This is not easy. It's taken me years to get to this point of knowledge that I'm at now, and to kind of settle on the perfect kind of training routine of how to split the days up for maximum recovery and gains, how to deploy these certain tests, what tests are best to deploy, how to integrate the calisthenics into the mix, and when do you do pull-ups, when do you do push-ups, how do you integrate that into the split. It's a lot. It's a lot, man. I've spent like literally 3 to 4 years just kind of in the laboratory figuring all this out. And for the past year, I'd say I've really settled on something perfect. Same with my diet. Like in this last year, I've really fine-tuned everything. And it's not just these last 3 years. It's been like 10 years that I've been into fitness. But just the last 3 years, I really focused on just kettlebells, like nothing else. And before that, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a bodybuilder. I didn't build all this muscle in the gym or anything like that. I was much skinnier, much smaller, much less shredded. So I've got my own story around that, which I've talked about on this podcast. But that's pretty much it, guys. That's really it. It's that simple. And over time, again, spend time with these kettlebell weights. Even if you stranded me on an island with two 16-kilogram kettlebells right now, and I had no access to other ones and couldn't progressively overload through weight or anything like that, I could still maintain everything I've gained today and still progress fitness-wise. Would I be able to gain that much muscle? I might be able to gain a little bit more muscle, but I wouldn't expect to really push it because I wouldn't be able to progressively overload the weights, but I can make the workouts much more intense, much more challenging, and still get that stimulus. Because the best thing about kettlebells is they are weights, they're resistance. So it's going to be extremely hard for you to lose muscle, even doing high intensity cardio circuits because it's all weight resistance. So at the very least, you'll maintain, and if you structure them properly, you can still gain. So, and then just watch your collection grow over time. So, I would probably be scaling. You probably have to buy two new kettlebells maybe every 6 months if you want to be conservative, 6 to 8 months. And then once you get to 24 kilograms as a man, you can, depending on how old you are, again, if you're over 40, I would probably recommend you sticking with those 24s for the rest of your life, and then eventually you'll have to scale down. And age is a thing. But if you're younger than that, try to push it as much as you can. But just know that being at 24s is 24 kilograms. That's real man weight. You can do. I could survive off that and make gains for the rest of the next 20 years probably. Let's say 10 years, because in 10 years I'll be around 38, and it's only so much gains you can make after that, and your priorities change, rightfully so. And that's another thing I'll throw in is this is all conducive to longevity. I had shoulder surgery when I was young. I've gone through a lot of BS with physical setbacks and whatnot. Training with kettlebells is the only way that I've really been able to push myself to the limits. Get that bodybuilder's pump, get that runner's high, still make progress while making my joints stronger, feeling better in my body, all that type of good stuff. So it's very potent and it's very underappreciated and underrated. So if you guys are sick of going to the gym, you resonate with the Tyler Durden physique, the performance, the feeling healthy, feeling like you can fight. Not that you have to fight, but you're in fighting shape, because being in fighting shape never hurt anybody, except the person who's on the other side of that. If you resonate with that, get some kettlebells, man. I promise you will not regret it. But that's it. If you guys need me, hit the link tree in the description. I'll put the workout details in the description as well. And I appreciate you all for listening. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe if you're still here. If you're still here, you definitely got value, so you better like and subscribe. Peace.